This is my brother. His name is Mark Ryan McGinley. He was killed on September 11th, 2001. In the time following that day, I've thought a lot about Mark and what it really means to have and lose a brother. I hated that I hadn't gotten the chance to say goodbye to Mark, that he hadn't had the chance to make peace with his life. He had died in an instant, and in many ways, it was almost like he had just vanished. The hardest thing of all was that as time went on, I could feel him fading away. I found myself slowly losing a strong sense of him. As months passed, I found it more and more difficult to hear his voice in my head, to see his face in my mind. About 10 months after September 11th, I left my home in Los Angeles and moved to a sublet in New York to interview 31 men from 25 different families who had also lost brothers in the World Trade Center.
This is, my brother loved this car, and so did Jude, so I went out and I bought it. We only live once.
I had no exact format in mind, and when we started, I wasn't even sure what, if anything, this project would amount to.
You just love them in a way that, you know, very often isn't put into song or poem. I mean, you know, popular music is always, you know, going on romantic love, but it's a type of deep love that, that you know, Shakespeare had talked about in Henry V with Harry the King's Band of Brothers speech.
I just felt an urge to meet these men and hear about their brothers.
Jimmy's everywhere. Jimmy's on my body. There he is.
They invited me into their homes, we sat down, and they started talking.
Should I start? Okay. I'm Stan Simon. My brother was Arthur Simon. He worked at Fred Alger on the 93rd floor of the North Tower. Unfortunately, he lost his son at the World Trade on the 104th floor. So we had a double tragedy in our family.
My name is Jose Quintana. I lost my two brothers, Felix Vale and Ivan Vale. They both worked at Cantor Fitzgerald, Tower 1, and 101st and 105th floor.
Okay, I'm Tom Resta. My brother was John Resta, and he worked at Car Futures.
I'm Michael Resta. My brother was John Resta. It's John and Sylvia.
She also worked for Car Futures, and she was also killed on the 11th. She was 7 months pregnant.
My name is Patrick Nassani. This is my brother Ryan Nassani, and we lost our youngest brother Sean Nassani on flight 175. It was the second flight that went into the trade towers.
In my eulogy, I talked about neighbors. Of all of our neighbors, I had nobody. So I begged my parents for a baby brother. So it took them, you know, many years later, John almost being 10 years younger than me, and it was somewhat of a surprise. I ran up and down the neighborhood as a 9-and-a-half-year-old kid, banging on the doors. The neighbors could still tell you this. I got a brother, I got a brother, I got a brother. And, you know, I had somebody finally. It was pretty cool.
Having a brother, a twin brother, it's a little different because it's almost like he's almost like me and I'm him. Like an example, I could be thinking of a song and he'd start whistling it. It's just like, I guess it's that twin thing. And I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about that. And I don't know how to explain it, but we were a whole lot closer. It's like, even though we're two different people, it's like we're almost one.
You know, we have different fathers. Sometimes people would say, oh, you know, that's not your brother. And I would be like, what are you talking about? It was like, I was 3 years old. My mom and dad divorced. John took me under his wing. I said, how could he not be my brother? Because we have the same mom. Doesn't matter whether there's different father or not. The point is we share the blood. So.
One of my most memorable memories of John, of being a little kid, I was about 9, 10 years old, and I was eating bacon in the kitchen, and I swallowed a whole piece of bacon. And I wasn't breathing. And John walked into the kitchen, saw me, and he couldn't have been more than 15, 16 years old. He reached into my throat and just pulled the bacon out and looked at me like, chew your food. It was like as simple as that, And
it was funny because in our bedroom, because Sean and I shared a bedroom. It was a 3-bedroom house. So my parents and Pat had his own room, and Sean and I shared a bunk bed up until college. I was in a bunk bed to college. And
early on, when the movie The Endless Summer came out, my father bought one surfboard, and the 7 brothers shared one surfboard, and we used to go to the beach and used to get about 3 rides each, and it's my turn, my turn, my turn. And I think as an older brother, the thing about the twins when they were young, it was always a great way to meet girls because they were so cute.
Growing up in our early teens, I would say that we probably didn't get along too much. We probably fought a lot.
Down in my basement, we used to paint hockey lines. We painted like a whole rink down there. So one time I scored a goal, and I don't know what happened. I guess I was too excited about it. So I started, taunting him. Just basically took a stick and cracked it over my head. So.
He was pretty smart, actually, too. I remember one time we were fooling around and roughhousing, and he was like 4 years old, and he took a plastic wiffle ball bat and whacked me on the back, and then he started screaming and crying. My father came in, and of course I got another whack because my old man thought I had beaten on him, and not quite. I guess he was sort of smart and sort of tough.
When we were younger, we used to fight like little brothers did, and I was the older brother, so I pick on him a little bit. And my mother used to say to me, one day, you're going to be sorry because he's going to be bigger than you. And I'm telling you, one day I came home and he was 4 inches taller than me.
Growing up in the neighborhood, we grew up in Staten Island, it was a tough neighborhood, and if things happened and, there was going to be a fight or something was going to go on, if someone heard that, well, that kid's John McAvoy's younger brother, things didn't happen. Just like, oh, okay, he's John's brother, you better stay away because then you got to answer to John. And that was a real good security blanket to have.
I remember one time when I was going to school with him at the same time, kid beat me up on the school bus, and I found him and I was crying and I said, Joe, I could barely speak, I was like, the kid, and he ran and got him good, And that's what he would do, so he'd beat the crap out of him, and that's what brothers are,
This store right here, it's called Century 21. It's a clothing store. My brother lived in here. He lived in here. We used to call him, he looked like he came out of the cover of the GQ magazine. He was always in tip-top shape, even if he was in sweatpants and sneakers. That's the funny part. He looked always, he had something that made him shine.
We were always, my brother was a big Guido. What you guys read about, you guys see in the movie, my brother was the definition of a cougine. There was no question about it. Freestyle, the whole 9 yards. I found in his closet, he had the suede Fila suit. And they always went commando. I don't know if you know, no underwear.
He had a thing phenomenal for dressing up as a girl at times, especially holidays, things like that. And like I said, in photos, you could see it. It started from roughly of the age 6. You never knew, man, maybe that one day my brother, might go the other way. But he just knew that he'd make you laugh, and that's what he wanted. He was just so full of life.
Girls loved him.
That's good.
Yeah. He's a good-looking guy, growing up. He was cool. Brother was cool.
There's times when in high school, we took advantage of our twin thing. Yes, we did. And the girls would usually ask, there's something different about you. Yes, there was. You to the right, I'm to the left. No. But, we took advantage of that all the time. All the time.
And we'd tell people he could break dance, and we'd go to a party up at school, and he'd go out and he'd get a cardboard box, and he'd bring it in and say, leave that there, I'm going to break dance later. We sit there waiting for it. And like everyone would stop and
All
say,
these
"You ready? You
girls.
ready?"
He waited for it. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it now. No, yeah.
Then he'd go down and go, "Oh, my back. Oh, my back. Oh, my God." I mean, Brendan was a big guy.
I always remember my father saying that someday he would be my best friend. And, you know, listening to advice from your father as a teenager, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but you realize later in life that it was true, and we did become best friends and remain best friends.
Growing up, I gotta show you something that's pretty funny. When we used to grow up, I says, "Dad, it's too much up with the girls living upstairs. Can me and John move down into the basement?" So we moved down into the basement, but he would catch us sneaking out at night. One night, he came in and he saw like footprints, mud prints on the wall. So he went and put bars so we couldn't sneak out.
Most of the interviews began like this, with stories about growing up. Everyone had them. I could tell that the men I met with loved talking about their brothers, and it felt like telling the stories was a way of experiencing the men who were lost, almost like they were coming back to life in some strange way. I thought of the times I'd had with Mark and our youngest brother Drew growing up, and somehow these memories meant more to me than they ever had before.
My brother was deaf. My brother was born deaf. And I don't know what I was to him. I mean, he depended on me a lot for things. We weren't typical brothers in the sense of, you know, I'll see you on Sunday, we'll play ball together. You know, we did some of that, but we probably were in contact with each other probably every day for the better part of 5 years. Very, very closely related in good and bad times. He would just send faxes, because it was great. Emails and faxes, that was like, I think the greatest thing ever created for him. But he would, you know, went out last night, I was here, you know, just telling me things, you know, checking this Ranger game scores, you know, big Ranger fan, tell me, oh, Rangers won, and I say, okay, you know, or I have a problem, you know, give me a call, I'm not coming in today, call the office, tell them I'm not coming in, okay, great. So it was like, that was my daily routine, you know, to the fact that like this is like a big void. You know, I mean, the longer this goes on, the more void it is. In the beginning, it's okay, it's a disruption, you know, okay. But now it's not happening. Every day goes by, it's another day. Go and listen to telex now. No, you know, there's no facts, you know, there's nothing, you know. It's bizarre.
Lo que era una unión, que ahí murieron hombres que son cosas que uno no puede, muchachos. De que ya de las 3 de la mañana estábamos juntos hasta el día entero, porque de ahí cogíamos para el trabajo. Íbamos juntos a coger tren allí, de ahí íbamos para la torre. Imagínate, era el día todo juntos. Kike bajaba aquí, yo subí un día, o sea, sí. Que nosotros siempre hemos vivido compartiendo uno con otro. Es una unión que solamente podemos dividirnos así como dividimos ellos dos. Pero siguen en el corazón de nosotros, que yo siempre le digo a mi esposa, ellos están con nosotros aquí, que bien no se han ido, ellos están con nosotros. Porque yo por rato pienso que ellos se me despidieron, pero por rato creo que están conmigo, que aquí que vaya ahí, porque él cada vez llegaba ahí, no, coño, ¿qué tú haces aquí sentado? Tú te vas a pegar y digo, pero esto es la calle, vamos aquí, sube para arriba, para mi casa. Y así era que pasaba el día, subía, bajaba.
Like, this house has been in that family since they built it.
My grandmother's grandfather built it.
So, when I was engaged, you know, we moved in and we stayed here, and then it just happened convenience too. People would just be moving out. We weren't like kicking them out, and Nana didn't kick them out.
No. My wife and I kicked Nana out.
Oh, yeah. That's what you wanted.
She had just had a heart attack, so she was going to live with my parents.
Right.
And around the time, Stacy and I were getting married, so we moved upstairs. And then Sean, with my parents moving, Sean needed a place, and luck would have it, the people on the 3rd floor moved out. So, and we've been here, because grandmother owns the building, rent is cheap,
Yeah.
So, it's funny, I the middle son, and I was in the middle apartment. You know, so I remember surrounded by these guys my whole life. But
that night before, he was gonna stay over Lynn's because it was closer to the airport. So I got a call that I guess my car was blocking in his car, so I had to move the car. So I was like, gave him a last hug, and I'm very jealous. You guys, I've been to Hawaii before, and I was like, you guys can have a blast. I'm jealous, have a great time. And I can still remember them backing up, waving, smiling.
Well, after you you said I'm jealous, didn't he do a little hula dance?
Yeah, he did a little hula dance kind of
to rub it
motion.
in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did he need a motorcycle? No. Did he want a motorcycle? Yes. And he came to me and he says, he knew how to turn my wrenches, He's like, Honda is offering this great deal, John. I'm gonna go get this Honda. And I'm like, dude, I cannot have you on a Honda. This will not be happening in my lifetime. And we went to the bank, we took out some money, and we found a bike for him, and he was loving it. And, we went from him stalling every 3 inches, and then learning to turn, and me teaching him. Though James was 26, I'm still the older brother, so I would only allow him to go in 2 blocks in any direction from where I was alone. And I made him wear this really big helmet that made him look like a zoo. And he would say to me, how long do I gotta wear this stupid helmet? I look like an idiot in it. But I was so afraid of him getting hurt on the bike, I never thought, that he would have lost his life in an act of hatred and terrorism, I was always trying to protect him.
We lived together, we split the bills, split the mortgage, and we figured one day when one of us gets married, we'll sell the house and go on our own way. So we're still here 7 years after my mom passed away. And then actually, we was kind of rough at first, So we had a system worked out. It took a while, like a marriage. You have to work things out, work the kinks out. But we lived together our whole life. We knew what bothered each other. We tried to annoy each other, how brothers do. You get your broom out. I used to get the broom, leave a pile of dirt on the floor, and I wouldn't pick it up. And I knew he'd come home and it would bother him. And then he would do things to bother me, like leave his clothes everywhere, So, but we'd constantly be going at it. We would compare, Greg and I, being Bert and Ernie from growing up, to we imitate Abbott Costello, to the Blues Brothers, to you name it, any combination. But I'll take you around the house.
Yeah, show us around the house.
I'll show you around the house. I'll show you the basement. The basement is what Greg and I renovated back in 1996 and up. It was built. He called it his Mojo Room. This is sort of like the theme from A Field of Dreams. You build it and they will come. We built this very nice bar and kind of lounge area so everybody could come to our parties and have a great time. So, yeah, I'll put the lights on. And on the bar here, he actually went to school, New York City School of Bartending. It cost him $800 to become a bartender. Just get a license, to know how to make drinks, just for down here. Just for people, you want a drink, something weird? He knew how to make it, it was ready for you. He always had it, and it never said no. We built this outside shower, it was Greg's idea. We couldn't fit it all on one wall. He wanted see-through. Maybe one night he would be able to get a few girls put on a show for us something, So, it's right now, it's a little storage bin right now, but
And Super Bowl Sunday. And he made some comments at me, and I told him to shut his mouth. I said that wasn't cool. And he kept doing it and doing it. And basically, I look at it now as he pushed my button. And I told him if he didn't shut up, I'd actually turn around and punch him in the mouth. And I was driving. And he's sitting there, and he comes right up, and he's like, "Why, you gonna do it?" And I went like that, and I just popped him right in the mouth. Stupidity. And my birthday came around, and I said to him, I called him up, and I said, "Can we go out, and have a beer on my birthday?" And he said, "Sure, why not?" I said to him, when we got together, I said, "Dude, I am so sorry for things that that day." I said, I didn't let myself live it down you figure it's in February. My birthday's in August. Even for his birthday, he already had plans, so I kind of stepped back and I went out, but we never really talked much about it. And I told him, you're my bro, and you know, I will never let that happen again. And you know, he gave me a hug. We drank a few beers, and then he started yawning, saying he had a long day at work. And I drove him home, and we went home. That was the last time we ever fought. From there on, it just became some real good times. And then it got cut off.
My mom, after my dad's death, for the next 2-3 years, kept saying to my brother and myself, you know, that's all we have is each other. You know, I'm going to be gone soon, and you'll only have you and your brother. So love your brother. You know, stay with him, talk to him, make sure. And actually, that's what was happening. We actually got the closest we ever were in the last 5 years since he's been married and since he started having kids and everything. You know, we now have mutual stuff to do. You know, we're both married, we both have kids, so we can bond with all those ideas a lot easier. And it brought us a lot closer.
You know, near the end of the summer, you know, we were together on the beach, and we had a real good time together. We fished together. You know, we really got, I guess, reminiscent. You know, and it was late August, as a matter of fact. So it was a good time, but it definitely stands out because we, you know, had a lot of laughs. We laughed a lot, and you know, I really remember that day. I remember that day really well.
In 1997, Mark graduated college and decided he wanted to move to New York to work in finance. A friend of mine, Christopher Dinkoff, helped Mark get an interview with a company called Car Futures. Not long after that, Mark landed a position at Car. When I visited, I could see in his face how much it meant to him that he'd been able to make this life for himself, living and working in New York. And I could hear in his voice how proud he was when he'd tell people that he worked as a trader on the 92nd floor of the World Trade Center.
September 11th at 7 a.m. He was in the bathroom. He just got out of the shower. He was shaving. I was waiting for him to come out of the bathroom so I can go in. He was complaining of stomach aches for the past 3 or 4 days. And Jude's sitting there shaving, and I'm talking to him, and I'm telling him, you know, why don't you call in? Because he didn't want to take off. He doesn't like to take off. He just started there. He didn't want to start off on the wrong foot, and he was really dedicated towards that job. I've never seen him so dedicated towards something before.
We were working at 205 South Street. It's the old New York Post building. And my brother James had called me. And he was calm on the phone. He says, John, Tower 1 just got hit by an airplane. Michelle's in there. You know, what are we going to do?
Michelle's your sister.
Michelle, my sister.
And I called him, but he didn't answer. I said, oh, maybe they're just evacuating them, I don't know. So I called my dad, and I can tell from his voice he was somewhat upset, but he had heard from my brother, and he said that they're telling him to stay. He says he called, he said he's fine, and I remember like it was yesterday, the sound of his voice. They're telling him to stay, and he was pissed. He was mad that they were telling them to stay.
I had a second phone call from him that I received en route to the Trade Center. It was James giving me my sister Michelle's cell phone number. He was only able to give me the first 4 digits. He's like, John, Michelle's cell phone number is 1-516-7, and then he went, whoa, what the hell was that? That was the very moment that the South Tower was hit by the plane, and then the line went dead.
So I remember saying to him, Andre, just, I know you sock guys. special operations guys. I said, I know you rescue guys. You don't do anything stupid. Don't try to be a hero. Just do your job, follow your training, and I'll see you down there. Because he knows my unit's only like a 5-minute walk from here.
I rode up one-way streets. Police were going everywhere. So I had to drive like a madman to get there. And it wasn't easy.
And I call the cell, I get an answer. Call back the desk. Nobody's answering. So I finally call back the cell for a third time. And Steve picks up. And he's like, hello. And I'm like, Steve, it's Greg, is that you? And it's very staticky. And I go, Steve. And he goes, Greg? I go, yeah, Steve, it's Greg, are you okay? And he goes, Greg, is that you? I go, Steve, yeah, it's me, are you okay? And at that moment, the second plane comes smashing through the second building. And I heard his voice say, oh my God, look at that. And then the phone went dead.
By the time I get down there, now I got 2 towers that are hit by planes. I got my brother in the south tower and my sister in the north tower. So my confidence and my belief in my brother, me thinking that he was already on his way down, I never thought that he was still up there. I just thought that he would just come out. And I just started looking for my sister automatically. And there was thousands of people evacuating, and out of all these people, there my sister pops out.
They said, get your uniform on. So I threw my uniform on. The sergeant who I live up here with, upstate, he grabbed a car on the side and he says, let's go. So he grabbed 4 of us and him. We jumped in the marked car and we flew down there. We made it down all the way to ground zero.
We're standing there, and then all of a sudden this eerie whistle starts to happen. I can't even mimic the sound. I can't even describe it, but all of a sudden you heard this whistling, and it was getting closer and closer, and I looked up, and it was happening. And if I had gone left, we were dead. If I had gone right, we were dead. And it was just the luck of the draw. I don't know if my brother was helping us at that moment, because at the same time that my sister and I were running for our lives, he was losing his.
Then you could see the bellowing of the smoke in his tower, and it just got worse and worse. I felt myself like just, it was very difficult. It's hard to watch your brother die on national TV, and that's what I knew was going on.
Within seconds, we were completely covered in ash. You couldn't even run because you didn't see where you were going. At one point, the sound was so deafening when that tower was coming down that I didn't know where to run. I thought, this is it. I thought a bomb had went off. It didn't, I didn't know what was happening.
You could see that blue uniform over here and a blue uniform over there. But all I saw that does stick out a lot was shoes. Tons and tons of shoes all over the place. Mostly women's shoes, you could say, like flip-flop types.
So we walk into a deli and everybody is just taking things from the deli. The deli owner is like, take whatever, you need water, take it. He wasn't even, he was just like, take everything, take water. And my sister took extra water. And so I told my sister, okay, I want you to stay here. Now, to separate from my sister at that point was something that I really had to think about, but I didn't have the time to really have the thought pattern, because I didn't know what was happening as I got closer to the Trade Center again. So I says, all right, you stay here. When I pull up, I want you to hop on the bike.
Had no contact with anybody down there. Watched the Trade Center come down on TV. And when I watched the collapse, I just felt this overwhelming sense of loss. And it was almost like a wave that came through my body. And at that point, I just knew that Michael was gone.
Oddly enough, my bike was completely covered in soot, but not one piece of debris hit it or nothing. So I just wiped it off and I got on it and I couldn't believe it. I was just thinking to myself, please stop, because the air was still so filled with all this stuff. I knew that the carburetor was just going to suck all this debris into the motor. And I was just, you know, I hope this thing starts, and it started. Pull up to the deli, my sister gets on, she comes out, she hops on, and we went eastbound, and then we followed the FDR as so many other people on foot. We just followed the FDR drive, and I never looked back. I know that I remember the most important thing, I never turned around the whole time that we were driving. I never turned around to look back at the Trade Center. I never, you know, leaving there, I never thought to even look back to see who was even there. And when we got to my mother's house, my parents were already on the porch. My sister got off the bike, and my father and mother, you know, hugged my sister, and my mother started screaming for my brother James, and I looked at my father, and I just said I couldn't get to him. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't do it. And that was it.
On the day of September 11th, I was in Los Angeles. I got a call from my mother at around 6 a.m. She was upset and crying. But I was sure that my brother was fine. He was just so tough. I remember saying to myself that he was the kind of guy who survived something like this. The next morning, I rented a car and drove to Houston, Texas, where I met my other brother, Drew. Together, we drove the rest of the way to my parents' home in Northern Virginia. By the time we got there, we just knew Mark was gone.
Well, actually, yeah, Leanna spoke to him on the cell phone while he was stuck in the room.
What did he say?
He told her that it didn't look good. It wasn't, he knew he wasn't coming home. And he said, this is bad. It's bad for the country. He said, it looks very bad. They were stuck in a room and they couldn't get out. And he told her, you know, I love you. Take care of Caitlin. And then he said it was getting too hard, getting too tough to breathe. He couldn't breathe. So he had to get down on the floor. And that's when the phone went dead. And when Ileana got the cell phone bill, she realized that her phone call started at 10:18 and it ended at 10:26. The tower went down at 10:28.
I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get there to help him out. I just felt helpless that I couldn't be there for him because I always promised him I would. No matter what. I mean, we promised each other that we would always be there for each other. And I couldn't be there for him that day, and it really hurt.
And then they read off the 4 planes that had been hijacked, and United 175, and my heart, you know, just fell, you know, right through my feet.
They had registries, you know, pieces of paper with people's names and room numbers and all of that. And I says, you know, I walked up to her and she says, can I help you? And I says, yes. I said, I'm looking for my brother. And I just broke down.
It's kind of strange to say, but I was just hoping that somebody would be saved. And even if it wasn't my brother, it would be okay. Just let's get somebody. But, you know, as we all know, as time went on, we realized that we weren't going to get anybody.
The one thing that stands out, it was so quiet. You know, there was so much devastation that just occurred, and you couldn't hear any screaming. You couldn't hear anything. You'd heard a siren in the distance, and just frustration. Trying to walk into the pile of steel and everything else, and just trying to figure out where you were. Where were the towers? It was all down. You know, it was a very, very tough thing to say.
You know, then they talked about DNA. And when I heard that, that's when I started saying, oh, shit.
That's when I thought, he's dead.
It's kind of tough too, because, you know, everybody from 91 down got out. For the sake of 10 or 12 feet, you know, you lost your brother, we lost our brother and a lot of other people. It's, I guess it had to be some floor, but it's hard to realize that 10 feet separated everybody.
Yo estaba incapacitado, porque él tenía 3 meses que se había caído con una caja de papa y se había... Yo sí estaba en el quecho para comenzar a trabajar el día 4, pero yo estaba en Santo Domingo y no pude venir, entonces lo dejé para venir el día 11 a trabajar el día 11. Cuando fui a la línea aérea ya a comprar el ticket para venir el 9 o el 10, lo encontré para el 13. Entonces llamé a Enrique, don Enrique, yo no hallo el pasaje para el día 13, pues cógelo suave, que yo, había un padre para el martes, que yo vaya a ver Che, para que el Che mire qué va a hacer. Entonces Juan Nieves había salido de vacaciones el viernes, que se iba para Puerto Rico el jueves. Entonces el Che lo llamó y dijo, no, pues yo te voy a trabajar martes y miércoles, porque yo ya tengo el pasaje para irme el jueves a Puerto Rico. Entonces Juan Nieves, ya que fue que se jodió por mí. Yo no podía venir, Juan se jodió.
September 11th was his friend's birthday that he met at Cantor, and his friend Mike Favali had recently moved on to another job. Mike and he used to play golf on 9/11 for the past 4 years or so before that, I believe. Because Mike had moved jobs, he didn't want to take the chance on taking a day off while he was still in like his probation stage. So they didn't go golfing on September 11th. Otherwise, it could have been a different story. I probably would never have you here right now in my backyard.
It was probably about 2 or 1 in the morning that day on the 18th, that night. I gathered everybody together and I said, here's the thing, we're not going to find Jay alive. And we need to start preparing for that.
He parked his car every day right here, one of these 3 spots, out on the railroad. And he was always one of the earliest ones. But he had searched for a car. It's like a kid could just go write a check for any car he wanted, practically, but he wanted the right car. The next morning, I was in the police department giving the police report in that window, and looked out the window, and that's where his car was, you know.
My daughter was born on October 12th. The anthrax attack started on October 10th. I can remember holding my daughter, she was a day old, and just sobbing, knowing that she lost her godfather, she lost her Uncle John, and now this anthrax. Like, what the hell kind of world am I bringing you into?
In the event of losing a brother like Chris, who, you know, like I said, we had grown so close as adults because, you know, we talked every day, worked in the same business, you know, went on ski trips together and you know, went to each other's houses, and he was godfather to my first daughter, Ava. And, but in the aftermath of that, you know, it would have been a great comfort to me to have Mark Kaleo, Stephen Kaleo, Craig Montano, someone that he worked with. And the fact that they were all wiped out was just devastating. And, you know, those are the guys I always confided in. And all of a sudden, it's like you went into battle and everyone was killed but you. And, you know, one of the first feelings I had was not a death wish, but I wished I was with them. And, you know, and I know if I was stuck there with them, there was no way out, but you hope maybe you would have figured something out. But we had spent so much time together, so many good times together, that, you know, it's like they made a trip without me.
You have these fantasies and these daydreams that, you know, him walking through the door, you get a phone call, this isn't the movies, so it didn't turn out to be a happy ending.
I mean, I was just gone. I was getting on wrong trains. I was just disappearing. I'm making phone calls. My wife, I just was lost.
Work didn't provide any release for me. Work was a very bad situation. And not being at work, not working with my sister, but the environment that I was in just was not helpful to me. And I wasn't going. I went, you know, maybe from 9/11 to March, I worked 1 full week. And I just needed to check out. I mean, I would leave work and just go to the movies. I needed to be alone. I needed to be at a place where I could just withdraw.
But I remember, you know, in a Jewish funeral, you throw dirt on the grave. And I remember when I did that, I fell to the ground, you know. And I just remember saying, you know, he just went to work. He just went to work.
Hard to admit, it was about mid-November on my way to work in Penn Station, and I'm standing there, and it's been a lot of pain. And I was so depressed that I thought of jumping in front of a train when it pulled into Penn Station. And I said, I gotta tell my wife, because this ain't good. I got a daughter that's a month old, and I'm thinking of killing myself.
I mean, for me, the hardest thing was the first time without him doing a certain event, like going to the gym for the first time without him, going to Marine Park, running without him, being on a motorcycle without him, not looking on my left shoulder and having him right next to me on his motorcycle. That's what hurts the most. You know, you say to yourself, Greg should be here for this. Greg should be here for so many things. And even when I was down in the World Trade Center, I said, Greg should be here for this, you know, but he was there already. Unfortunately, I was there for that one reason. But I think I went down to the World Trade Center anyway, if Greg was lost or not. We probably both could have been down there looking for our fallen brothers.
By September 13th, I had to go back. And the Mayor Giuliani put the call out for skilled tradesmen to come down there and help. And I said, that's me.
So I guess about mid-February, I started going down as much as I can, and I was reassigned to the Trade Center Task Force, and I was able to go down there every day that I wanted to, which was pretty much every day.
I didn't want to go back to my firehouse. I really didn't. And I signed up for, it's called a GPS unit, Global Positioning Systems. And basically what we did was we went to the site, covered the whole 16 acres of land, and we bagged parts, remains.
I remember the first bit of remains I found. I was like, oh my God, how could this have happened? You know, you carry that with you, you know. It's like, you know, what do you do with that? Where do you file it under? Where do you put it? You're standing there and you have a piece of a human being in front of you and you're waiting for somebody to hand you a bag to put it in. What do you do with that?
Because initially, you know, when a plane blowing, I just thought he was incinerated. And then when his remains were found, that shattered that whole idea. And one of the first things that goes through my mind is, what did he go through? What, after speaking with them and getting some more details as to where he was, I know he made it out. I'm pretty sure he made it out, considering where he was found. It's a little frustrating knowing he probably got out of the building, and maybe if he had a little more time, he might have survived.
So I guess because most of the emergency services and fire department were at the first building that got hit, John went to the second building that got hit. And he was recovered beneath the second building on, very appropriately, on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th.
On my way back to New York, my sister-in-law called me and said that a policeman had come and identified his body. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal feeling. I had to see him. As much as the individual at the funeral home said, I really would prefer you not see him because of the condition that his body was in. I had to see him. I said, I don't care. He made me sign a waiver that I wouldn't hold him liable in case I had emotional damage because I saw what I saw. I said, I don't care. Sign the waiver. And I went and saw, and it wasn't a very pretty picture. It didn't smell good, but I was there. I was there with my brother, and And as bad a condition it was in, I saw him, I felt close to him, I made promises to him that I said I'd keep for the rest of my life. I said prayers for him. I sat there for 15 minutes and I didn't want to leave because that was the last time I was going to see him. I lived through, I started telling him stories, It was a great feeling, and even though he wasn't talking back to me, I knew he was there because it was really hard when I went back to New York, when I went back to Houston on the 24th. Our plane went over, close to Manhattan, and you look down and you see the skyline, and since I hadn't found him yet, I felt like I was leaving him. I felt like that was the wrong thing to do because he was still out there somewhere, whether he was alive or not. But, when I came back, it was good. It was good that happened.
This is my brother's apartment. I used to visit him here as often as I could. He'd let me sleep on his couch. We had so many good times here together. About 2 weeks after September 11th, my parents and my other brother, Drew, drove up to New York in a van we had borrowed to clean out Mark's apartment. There were about 20 messages on my brother's answering machine, left from friends who had called on the 11th. We sat and listened to the messages, at first asking him if he had heard about what happened, and eventually demanding in the annoyed way friends do for him to call. Within a few hours, we emptied Mark's apartment and left. It struck me how sad it was that we were able to remove all trace of my brother in such a short time. It didn't make sense somehow. My brother had loved New York. He was such a part of the city, at least to me. I kind of found it hard to believe that the city could just go on without him. Like many of the men I interviewed, I found this grief seemed to linger, and I almost wanted it to. It was all I had left of my brother.
As I was beginning months, and I was trying to stay tough and everything, I was trying to hold everything back. But then it eats you up inside when you do that, and I said, I gotta start expressing my emotions. And it's not hard for me to cry now. Before it was hard. Even when I would try to cry, I didn't want to because, I was always taught guys don't do that,
And it was tough concentrating on work. It was tough concentrating on other stuff, paying bills, doing groceries. None of that mattered that much in the first 2 months. But then you realize, there's a whole bunch of us living that I need to take care of. I'm a father. I have 2 kids I need to be responsible for. And, if I sleepwalk at work, it may affect them eventually. I can't cry every day because that affects my mother also. So we started getting better.
You just realize, like I talked to some friends' fathers who were in the big wars, and they said, look, you just have to go on, we lost a lot of people when we were in World War II or something else, and then you realize it's happened before, and life does go on, and you just have to move ahead. You're a better person for having known them, whether it was for 37 years or a week.
You can't get away from it. Every day there's a reminder about 9/11, whether it's on TV or the radio or newspaper. There's always reminders. It's not like losing somebody because of an illness, It's a different kind of situation. And I don't know if I'll ever get over it. I'm trying, but it hasn't been easy.
That was like that scene of Sean and Lynn's playing, United 175 going in was like one that was, that was always on, because it was one of the, the ones that they had the most footage of, because, they had the first tower already, so all the cameras were up there, filming it. And when it first happened, it was, again, the whole shock was there. But now when I see pictures of that plane, going in or whatever, I can actually look at it and say, in a sense, that's like the last picture of my brother alive. You can't see him, but and that he's there, he's alive. You know, won't be for much longer.
Eso es difícil en la vida. Yo digo que lo olvido el día que me muera. Jamás en la vida volveremos a ser felices. Jamás en la vida. La familia Gómez no volverá a ser feliz jamás en la vida. Porque ha sido un hoyo demasiado grande que no ha ido, que no han hecho. Yo por parte mía, yo seré feliz el día que me muera.
We lost 3 firemen on the Father's Day before September 11th. And that was the worst day that I've lived through as a fireman. And we thought that would be the worst. And I spent that day with my brother. And we talked about dying that day. And we were saying how, you know, life's too short and we gotta live, and let's plan that trip to go sailing.
You know, the thing that everybody has to remember, death came with a fury that didn't care what you did. If you were a corporate broker and you made $2 million a week, death came for you. And if you were a window washer and you made $9.99 an hour, death came for you too.
You know, people yelling and screaming. Nobody towards us, but from what I heard in the area, you know, towards Arabs. I'm considered Arab. I lost my brother. Is he any different from your brother or the other person's sister? Or he's not. They're all human beings. And whoever killed them didn't care what religion or race they were, or where they were from.
Do you believe in God?
Not anymore, no.
I'm not religious at all. I just don't understand people believing that God does everything good and everything bad is our fault. I think this is it. I think you live your 65, 75 years here, and you know the TV turns off when you die, and there's nothing else.
I do believe in what you're saying about that. I you know, there is a plan, there is, I guess, but again, it's the living. Us as living, that's what we come up with. The dead have nothing to say, and we really don't know. You know, we just got to keep going. And we'll find out the hard way when we die, if there is a big plan or not.
When this first started happening, sometimes the angriest I'd get was when I was in church. I wanted to rip the pew in half in front of me. Then you start to hear that the planes weren't full of people. Then you start to think, you know, 20, 30, 40,000 people could have died that day, and they didn't. When you think that about 2,000 people died between those buildings, that's pretty amazing that more people didn't die.
Somebody that worked with Sean gave Pat and I tickets to Cal Ripken's last game at Yankee Stadium. And so we went there, and it was a miserable day. It was raining. And we were fortunate enough to be under the awning, the very little bit of Yankee Stadium that, you know, is under the awning. And people were, you know, because of the rain, people were all game. The game went 15 innings to 17 innings. In the rain, people were flipping back and forth with seats. And Pat and I were sitting next to each other, and there was a seat open, and I may have said to him, or I said to myself, you know, that seat will be for Sean. And so all game, you know, I'd look at it every now and then and whatever. And we were getting up to go, and I kind of like pushed myself up, and the seat went down, and there was a sticker on it and it said I miss you, you know, and I didn't even notice it, you know, all game. And then as we were leaving, I saw it, and you know, it's amazing, you know. So.
But then I had a dream a few months after, about November, December. I was in my bedroom sleeping. I heard the front door open up. I ran downstairs, and it was Greg with 2 suitcases in his hand. I said, "Greg, where were you?" And he goes, "I told you I was going on a trip." And I go, "How'd you go?" I go, "I have your wallet, I have your cell phone, everything you have, I have in this house. Where were you?" And he goes, "It was all inclusive. Everything was paid for. Nothing to worry about." I said, "You could have called me." I said, "You know," I said, "I don't want to argue with you. We fought all the time." I go, "I don't want to start a fight now. I don't want to argue with you. You could have called me in these last few months to tell me where you were." And I goes, "Don't worry about it. I'm fine." And
so I'd go to my mother's house, but instead of walking into my mother's house, I walked directly up the stairs into my neighbor's house. Now, this doesn't happen. It never happened before, ever. Why would I walk into my neighbor's house? I walk in, and there's my brother. He's like watching TV, sprawled out. My neighbor Joe is in the room, and he's just chilling out. I tell him, "You're going to be here when I come back?" And he says, "No, I can't stay long." And then it hit me. I said, "Oh, James, you know, everybody's been looking for you. You all right?" So he stands up, and I'm like, the moment he stands up, I'm hugging him, and I'm kissing him. I'm all over him, and I won't let go of him in the dream. I'm like, you know, James. Now, my sisters had dreams of him, and they always asked him, like, what happened, and, you know. So I was conscious of what I wanted to ask him in the dream. So I looked at him, and I said, "Tell me what you want me to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do anymore." So I asked him, you know. And he looked at me with a nice smile, and he says, "I want you to collect me and put me in a nice place."
I want to believe in afterlife. I don't want to believe in reincarnated. I don't want to come down here again. And I don't believe in hell. I think we're in hell right now. I think we make our own hell. And once we, you know, we're here on a visit on this planet. It's a short one too. It's not long. If we're going to live for eternity up in heaven or wherever it might be, we're not here a long time. Especially Greg is only here 31 years. So make it a good one. Make it a good trip down here, and hopefully the rewards are great at the other side.
You know, I always figured that no matter what happened in my life, Mike would always be there for me. So it was that much harder to lose him. But I know we'll be together again. Hopefully later than sooner, but whatever happens.
And that's what I'm trying to do with my brother. I recognize that he's not here with me, and it's hard because you know, I miss him very, very dearly. It's like, as I said, he's like a part of me.
But he never got angry. I mean, I never saw Arthur get angry. You know, I think only once he got angry about me about something, but he was a sweet guy.
And I tell you, I always, my mother and father say, you know, we planned on having Gregory. It was an accident. I thank my mother and father for having Gregory. I couldn't ask for a better brother or a friend. He was great to be around.
But we had some laughs, a lot of tears too, a lot of laughs, you know, and I miss him. I miss terrible.
I don't understand the whole thing. You know, that's what gets me crazy. You know, it's I just don't understand why he's gone. Just no, it doesn't make sense to me.
Bueno, queda poco de corazón. Queda poco. Queda poco. La mitad se llevaron ellos y la mitad no la dejaron.
So I think it's important that you tell people, look, keep talking about him. You know, when you stop talking about Steve, that's when it hurts. That's when it hurts the most. So don't, you know, celebrate yourself, celebrate your family, celebrate everything you are, because that's the way Steve was, and that's the way he'll always be to me.
September 9th was my wife's baby shower, and it was at John's house. John was the only guy there. He did all the cooking, hung out with all the women. You know, there's a picture of him smiling. He's holding an Amstel Light, I think it was, and, you know, that's him. You know, he was in his sneakers and shorts. He looked great, you know, and a big smile. I mean, John was a happy-go-lucky guy. He was a good guy, you know. I think of him all the time.
He had a quote over his desk, handwritten from Mark Twain, handwritten in his own handwriting, and it was a Mark Twain quote, and it was on a little Post-it hanging over his desk. And the quote is, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did. So cast off your bow lines, sail away from your safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sail, explore, dream, discover.
His chair is empty. My mom has a picture of him that she puts there, but it's not the same. You know, you're looking at a picture, you can't feel that person, you can't hug him, you can't tell him directly that you love him.
Let's give John a call. I saved my brother's phone, so we still have his voicemail. We call it just to listen to his voice.
Hi, you've reached John Sherry. Please leave a detailed message and I will get back to you. Thank you.
He was good. He was just a good kid. And now he doesn't have to deal with all of this.
He was 34. He is 35 now. He'll be 36 on September 20th.
40 years old. He was born May 17th, 1961.
Ivan was 27 and Felix was 29.
25. Lynn was as well.
Jude was 24, and he would have turned 25 October 9th.
He was 38. He was 39 October 9th.
He was 40. He would have been 42 actually this November.
Enrique 45. No, José 45. Sí, José. Y Enrique 43.
Greg was 31, almost 32.
He would have been 35 March 2nd.
He would have been 40 on February 13th.
He was 37 when he died.
He was 38 at the time.
He was 34.
He was 57.
37 and 3/4.
40.
He was 26.
41.
47.
37.
38.
34.
25.
28. It's not fair.
I got a memorial bench for him on the boardwalk, sitting on the bench. We played volleyball right where the bench is every Thursday night for the last couple summers.
At the end of my time in New York, as I finished the interviews and prepared to return to Los Angeles, I thought a lot about the experience I'd had.
This is it. This is the views. Best views on the beach.
Our stories were similar, despite the differences in age, background, and culture. It was almost like it all added up to one story. Our brothers had died together, almost simultaneously. The stories shared, the photographs, the memorials, the phone calls made to numbers we knew they wouldn't answer, even this film. They were all attempts to keep our brothers alive, to continue the relationship somehow. I believe in my heart that despite our loss, each one of us has grown to love and appreciate our brothers more because of their death. And I like to think that as sad as it is to no longer have our brothers around, we are all somehow better men for having lost them.
And you just hope this is the kind of event that makes the world a better place. It really does. You don't want these guys to have perished for nothing.
I don't know if this will make it in, but I just want to thank all the guys who gave their lives. And even the ones who were in there and made it out. All the police, EMS, Port Authority police. I want to thank them all, but most of all, my heart goes out to the 343 firemen's families. 343 of these guys died trying to save our brothers. And if I could have every one of them over here tomorrow and feed them dinner in any way to say thank you, I would do it. And I just want to say that my heart goes out to all of them.